All right, here we go. There are at least 5 wrong turns that lead us away from being emotionally balanced. When we are not emotionally balanced, we are not operating at our highest IQ or even EQ, if you will. So get this mental picture, if you will. Imagine a seesaw, okay? One of those seesaws that you used to play on at the playground as a kid. On one side of the seesaw is your emotions. That's where your emotions are. On the other side is your IQ. Okay, so when your emotions go up, your IQ is going down. The madder you get, the dumber you get. If you can keep your emotions on the ground, your IQ can remain high. You have got a lot of experiences in your life. You have done a lot. You have gone through hundreds and hundreds of seasons, and you've got a lot to share. You are far more intelligent than what you think you are. But the more emotional you get, the madder you get, the dumber you're getting in that same exact moment. So there are 5 moments that when our brains or our emotions begin to go down a certain road, we got to recognize we are going the wrong way, and we need to pull a U-turn immediately before something bad happens, before we say something that we're going to regret. And so here's the first thing, okay? This is the first moment where we know we're taking a wrong turn. When we have a wandering mind. Anytime our mind begins to wander from the present moment, we're taking a wrong turn. Because what that means is that we are not truly engaged in the moment that we're in. We live in an era of ever-increasing disconnection and isolation. For example, in today's world, everyone has a cell phone. It is almost comical that if you walk into a restaurant, you can just kind of look around the restaurant and just count how many people you see holding a cell phone. You look at couples, a husband and a wife can be sitting right across from each other. They're not talking to each other because both of them have their face in their phone. Even kids that are 6, 7, 8 years old, because of the cellular plans that you can get nowadays, they have phones too. I didn't even have a phone until I was in my mid-20s. Now we got 6-year-olds with phones. We got whole families sitting at dinner tables playing with their cell phone. And so this is causing us to not be engaged in the moment. Jack Gropel, the co-founder of the Johnson & Johnson Human Performance Institute, recognizes the difference between partial and full engagement. He goes on to say, we are partially engaged with thousands of people on the internet. We go from one conversation to another, often randomly. There is no eye contact and no true emotional connection. And so here are a few simple things that we can do to cause a U-turn when we make that wrong turn of having a wandering mind. Now, the 2 simple rules that I'm going to share with you, many of you are probably very familiar with them. The reason why I'm adding them to this episode is because oftentimes we have a knowing-doing gap. We know what we're supposed to do, but there's a gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. And so I'm going to mention these 2 things with the hope of inspiring you to follow through with it. Okay, so rule number 1. Our cell phones cannot be available 24/7. You and I cannot be a slave to that phone. The phone is a slave to us We own that phone. The phone doesn't own us. Just because it jingles or vibrates or dings or bongs, that doesn't mean we have to stop what we're doing to pay attention to what just happened. I mean, if you were in the middle of a conversation with somebody at church or at the mall or in the office, your midstream conversation, all of a sudden somebody walks up to you and starts tapping you on the shoulder, you'd look at them like, have you lost your mind? I'm in the middle of a conversation right now. So why in the world, when we're in the middle of a conversation, we get this little vibration in our pocket, do we stop what we're doing just to look? You know, I read something interesting, that the same endorphins that shoot through your body when you're gambling are pumping each time you see that someone has liked a post that you've put on Facebook. So here's the thought. Are you drunk in likes? There is a very simple reason why a like on social media feels so good. It gives us a high. It is a real psychological high. It is the fundamental reason why we keep going back to it. There's a psychologist out there. Her name is Emma Kenny. She says it this way. It's a reward cycle. You get a squirt of dopamine every time you get a like or a positive response on social media. So here's a thought. I have an Apple phone. I don't know if you have a Samsung or what, but I have an Apple phone and I can swipe up from my home screen and there's a little icon that has a half moon on there. And if I tap that half moon, that is a do not disturb button or selection. I don't know what it is on your phone. If you don't have an Apple phone, you figure it out. I'm sure it has it. But when you click do not disturb, you still receive your messages. But the calls, the alerts, the notifications that you get while your device is locked will be silenced. So you can actually be engaged in the moment. So the first challenge is to not be a slave to our cell phone. And the second one is this. Let's be phenomenal at eye contact. I was talking to my kids the other day. I've got 3 kids. One of them's only 4. She's about to turn 5, so she wasn't a part of this conversation, but my 2 older ones were. And we practiced how to have good eye contact when we meet someone. We practiced how to give a good handshake. So I've got a 13-year-old daughter and I have an 11-year-old boy. Girls need to shake hands differently than boys. There's nothing more peculiar than when you shake a lady's hand and she squeezes it so hard you feel like she's going to break it. And then there's nothing more awkward than shaking a man's hand and it feels like you're holding a fish, a limp fish. And so we practice shaking hands with each other. Not only did we practice shaking hands, but we practiced looking at each other in the eye. I'll tell you, if you are a pro at looking someone in the eye, you will always separate yourself from everyone else because not a lot of people can do that. It's a developed skill. The second U-turn or the second wrong turn that we take, in which when we take this wrong turn, we need to immediately make a U-turn, is whenever we are beginning to tread into the zone of alienation. So there is a difference between solitude and alienation. Solitude is giving yourself time and space to get alone and to refuel. Alienation, on the other hand, is when you are purposely avoiding being around people. Jenny Cadle, in her article, The Myth of Solitude, makes the statement that biologically, when you are disconnected from your partner, your brain and system get the message that there is something terribly wrong. Isn't that fascinating? See, human beings are a tribal species. In fact, many of us have 2 or 3 different tribes that we're a part of. We have our family, that's your tribe. You have your tribe at work. If you go to church, you have a tribe at church. If you're a part of athletics, like you like to run marathons, there might be a group of people that you run with or work out with. That's a tribe. Human beings are tribal species. When we're disconnected from our tribe, we are cutting ourselves off from our lifeblood. Our passions pump when we are contributing to something outside of ourselves. So the next time you feel like you're alienating yourself, now there's that fine line between solitude and alienation, but when you know that you're alienating yourself, as tough as the hurdle may be, the emotional hurdle may be, and I know it's tough because between solitude and alienation, sometimes I can enjoy the solitude so much I want to drag it, and then it goes into the red zone of alienation. And so I know exactly what it feels like. But as difficult as that emotional hurdle may be, we have to force ourselves to get outside of our little cave and get around at least one other person. I have one particular friend that if I just need someone safe to be around, I call this one particular guy. I've been friends with him for years. I don't need to work hard when I'm around him. I call him up. Because if we don't do that, our minds paddle around in circles, churning out more agitation and yearning. We miss feeling connected. And the longer you're alienated, the more difficult it feels to reconnect. The third wrong turn is anxiety. When you're feeling anxious, you're making a wrong turn. I'm making a wrong turn. And you can boil anxiety down to 2 thoughts. Either A, we are afraid that what we want, we are not going to get. Or B, we're afraid that what we have can be taken away. And so this is one of those things that sometimes I whisper to myself, I am not, okay, I don't whisper it. Sometimes I shout it. I am not going to be controlled and manipulated by being afraid that something is going to happen or not going to happen. That is not going to be me. I am not going to live this kind of life. I'm not going to do it. And if you haven't heard the episode, The Fog of Worry, as soon as you get done with this episode, scroll up and find that episode, because I talk a lot about anxiety and worry in that episode. I want to talk about another wrong turn. And this one is the blame game. The blame game. Some of us know people who are really good at this game. And to be honest with you, I'm good at this game. We just got a new puppy in the house. And this puppy, it's like a mix between a Shih Tzu and a poodle, a Shih Tzu and a poodle. So it's called a Shih Tzu. And the problem with this dog, we've had a lot of dogs in our family. I've been married for 17 years. We've had a few dogs, and we've never had as much trouble house training this dog as we did our others. And the reason for it is because this dog's legs are so short and his hair is so long, you can't tell when the dog is squatting down to pee. And so we're having a very difficult time house training this dog because, as you know, you have to catch it peeing or pooing in the house, and you have to yell at it so that the dog knows that that's not what you're supposed to do. And then you run them outside or you kettle train the dog. I mean, we know what we're doing, but it's just very difficult. But what's so interesting is every single time I see a little puddle of pee or some poo on the carpet, I'm looking around for someone to blame. I don't want to admit this, but let's just be honest for a second. When I see it, the first thing I'll say to my wife, hey, Allie, your dog just peed on the floor. You see how I did it? Your dog. Okay, even though it was a mutual decision to buy it. When it does something good, obviously it's my dog. But when it does something bad, it's her dog. But obviously I'm being a little bit cheeky, but you're getting my point. That we have a tendency, whether you call it projection or denial, blame helps us preserve our sense of self-esteem by avoiding awareness of our own flaws or failings. Blame is a tool that we use when we are in attack mode. Blaming people often falls into the category of a destructive conflict resolution method. Blame separates ourselves from the responsibility, and it turns and stabs. I know that's an aggressive word, but it turns and stabs the one we're blaming. So here's a fun little trick. The next time something goes wrong and you want to blame someone. I actually took this from a comedy, a movie out there. Many of you are familiar with it. It's called Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. And Ron Burgundy is played by Will Ferrell. But he's got this one line in this 2004 film where he looks at his partner and he goes, "Well, that escalated quickly." And I'll tell you, if you use that simple line, you can't help but to laugh, to look down at a puddle of pee and go, "Well, that escalated quickly." Somebody cuts you off, or somebody asks you, "Hey, why are you late for work?" Well, this conversation is escalating quickly. And you have to say it in a laugh, otherwise, or here, sometimes you can just whisper to yourself, "Well, this is fascinating. The stock just dropped and you just lost a few $1,000s. Well, that's fascinating." My point is this, is to just spin it, and if you're going to laugh about it later, laugh about it now. And what's so interesting is the hardest moments in life, the most difficult days in life, the most difficult seasons in life are usually the seasons that we brag about later. And so if we're going to brag about it later, yeah, I went through this, I did this, one time I did a business deal and I lost this much money. We usually brag. I know brag is a tough word to swallow, but let's just call it what it is. We usually brag about the tough seasons that we went through. When my wife and I first got married, we could vacuum our whole house without pulling the plug out of the wall. Because the house was so small, we didn't have any money. So at the time it was hard, but now I look back on it and I brag about it. About the tough times that we went through. And so if we're going to brag about it later, if we're going to laugh about it later, if we're going to be jovial about it later, why don't we just go ahead and rise above the situation and laugh about it now? Here's, like I said, I only got a few of these wrong turns, but I want to talk about fiction writing. When your mind is wandering, we're taking a wrong turn. I think I'm giving you more than five today, but I've only got two more on my list here that I want to talk about. Fiction writing. We all make assumptions throughout the day that what we're seeing, we're making assumptions about what we're seeing and about what we're hearing. And when our mind begins to fiction write, we're in a fact-free environment. We don't have any facts to back up the story that we're writing in our head about a person or a scenario. We don't have any facts. And so we begin to start fiction writing. Let me give you an example. Let's see you see a bumper sticker on someone's car. It's a political bumper sticker. And that statement on the bumper sticker is polar opposite of your political views. And so what do you think about that person that's in that car when you read that bumper sticker? Do you think that that guy's an idiot? That guy's closed-minded. That guy has a narrow view of society. Okay, I'm done. Have you ever met somebody for the first time and then they say something political and then all of a sudden, bang, that you just put them in a box straight away? Because that's called fiction writing. Or you send somebody a text message, they don't reply straight away. And because they didn't reply straight away, you come up with a whole story on why they didn't reply straight away. That's called fiction writing. Here's the very last one. Perpetual chaos. When you find that you are in perpetual chaos, and I say this respectively, you're making a wrong turn. When I do it, I'm making a wrong turn. Perpetual chaos, I came up with this term. I know it's not original, but I was thinking about a friend of mine that every single time I am with them, there is a major 911 issue going on. Every single time. And to be fair to this friend, when I have a major issue going on, they're the person I want to talk to because they rise to the occasion. They are the best person to talk to when there is something wrong. But I went out with them one time. I went out to lunch with them one time, and they asked me, or he asked me. He said, "Hey, how are things going?" I said, "Man, everything is going awesome. I mean, it is going awesome. I mean, I just went down this long list of all the things that were going awesome. And it was the lamest lunch that he and I have ever had with each other because he is wired up for chaos. He likes to talk about chaos and problems. I realize we all have a lot of plates spinning. We're commuting across town. We're handling work-related responsibilities. We're picking up the kids. We've got to shop for groceries. Simultaneously, we're dealing with everything else that life throws at us, from health issues to bills. Trust me, I live in the same world you live in. But it's something that we have got to monitor because every single time we interact with someone, we are building our reputation. And we want to be known as the people where the glass is half full. Some way, somehow, we can find the silver lining. And it's just, and I'll tell you what, that type of attitude becomes contagious. Because attitudes reproduce attitudes, spirits reproduce spirits. We all know that. That's why we look at kids in elementary school and we say, we don't want you hanging out with that kid. That kid's bad news. Why? Because we know that attitudes and spirits reproduce themselves. And so since we already know that, let's bring something to the room. Let's bring something to the relationship that when it gets reproduced, that room, that atmosphere, that person just got better because we came in. I hope that inspires you today. Everyone spends eternity somewhere. Make sure you're ready.